This story is about a lonely human who sat in the rain until an orc girl changed his world. A story, a fantasy story about loneliness, acceptance, and finding home in the most unexpected hurt. Welcome, reader. Before you dive into the story, know this: it is not just a fantasy tale, it is a mirror that shows us what happens when we stop judging by appearance and start listening to souls. This story is talking you, but Lyra had looked at him one cold November morning and said, "You are too quiet, Marsh. The silence around you feels like a grave." She left. She was not wrong. He had tried friends too, colleagues at the cartographer guild, where he worked, drawing maps of places he never visited. They invited him to dinner twice, maybe three times. He sat at those tables and smiled at the right moments and laughed when others laughed. But inside, he felt like a painting hung in the wrong room. Eventually, the invitations stopped. He told himself it was fine. It was not fine. On the evening, this story truly begins. It was raining, not a soft rain, the kind that makes everything feel romantic and sentimental. This was a brutal, cold, indifferent rain that hammered the cobblestones and turned the alloys into shallow rivers. Marsh had left his apartment for the first time in 4 days. He had no destination. He just needed to feel something, even if that something was just cold water on his face. He sat down on a stone bench at the edge of Milford Ark, which at his. This story is taking you deeper into a world where rain washes away loneliness and green hands reach where no human hand ever did. A man whose name was Marsh. Not that anyone used it anymore. He was 26 years old, but his eyes looked 50. The kind of eyes that had stared at too many empty chairs across dinner tables. The kind that had watched friends drift away like smoke, visible one moment, gone the next without a sound. Marsh lived in the city of Caldmere, a place where stone towers scraped grey skies, and everyone walked fast enough to avoid eye contact. He had a small apartment on the fourth floor of a crumbling building. One window, one chair, one cup, everything in singles. Because that was what he had become, a single, solitary thing in a world built of pairs. He had once tried, truly tried. He had opened his heart to a woman named Lara, who smiled like spring and laughed like bells. But Lyra had looked at him one cold November morning and said, which at this hour was completely empty. He did not open his umbrella. He let the rain soak through his coat, through his shirt, down to his skin. He stared at the dark pond ahead and thought, not dramatically, not with great poetry, just quietly and honestly. Thought he was perhaps the loneliest person alive. He did not cry. He had forgotten how. He just sat there, a man dissolving slowly in the rain, and he heard the sound of heavy boots on whetstone coming closer. She was 7 feet tall and built like a wall that had decided to go for a walk. Her skin was deep, mossy green, of old restaurants. Her tusks curved upward from her lower jaw, short, polished, the color of old ivory. Her hair was thick and black, but it did in three tight ropes that hung over a massive shoulder. She wore a traveler cloak soaked through over a leather vest studded with iron rivets. Her name was Groka, and she was staring at him. Marsh looked up slowly. His first instinct, trained by years of city living, was to stand and walk away. Orcs were not common in Caldmere. When they appeared, people crossed the street, shop doors quietly locked, children were pulled closer by anxious parents. It was not hatred exactly, it was something worse. The cold, efficient dismissal of anything unfamiliar. But Marsh did not walk away, partially because he was too soaked and too tired to pretend normalcy, mostly because something in her eyes stopped him. She was looking at him the way someone looks at a bird sitting in the rain, not with pity exactly, but with a quiet, baffled concern. Like she could not understand why something living would just sit and suffer without reason. You are sitting in the rain, she said. Her voice was low, like stones rolling slowly downhill. She spoke the common tongue with a slight accent, each word carefully chosen, as if language were a tool she respected too much to misuse. Yes, Marsh said, on purpose, sort of. She titled her hat. Then, without asking permission, she sat down beside him on the bench. The stone groaned faintly under her weight. She pulled her cloak partially off her shoulders and held it out, offering him shelter from the rain. Not dramatically, not with words, just a simple, practical gesture. The kind strangers almost never make. Marsh blinked. You don't have to. I know, she said simply, I want to. They sat under half a cloak in pouring rain for a long moment. Neither spoke, but the silence was different too. It was not the silence of loneliness, it was the silence of two beings briefly sharing the same corner of the world without needing to explain themselves. Finally, she said, I am Groka. I am passing through this city. I have nowhere to be tonight. He said, I am Marsh. I live here, and I also have nowhere to be. She looked at him steadily. This is a strange thing for someone in their home city to say. He looked at the dark pond. Yes, he agreed at his. And somehow, in that small, honest exchange, something cracked open in Marsh's chest. Not painfully, but gently, like a window pushed ajar after years of being sealed shut. They found a covered market stall nearby and sat under its caving as the rain continued its assault on the city. Gruka produced a small firestone from her pack, a smooth orange rock that radiated warmth when squeezed, and set it between them. Marsh had not felt warm in what felt like weeks. He learned towards it without shame. Where are you going? He asked. North, she said. Shattered peaks. My clan has a winter camp there. You are going alone? My companion decided to take a faster road 3 days ago. I prefer the longer way. I like to see things. She pulled out a strip of dried meat from her pack and offered him half. He was hungry enough to accept without pretending he was not. What do you do? Kruka asked. I draw maps, Vash said. Her eyes brightened. Genuinely, visibly. It was the most expressive her face had been. Maps, she repeated, as if tasting the word. You have drawn maps of many places. Hundreds. Places I have never seen. I copy explorer reports, survey data, travelers' descriptions. He paused. I draw roads I have never walked. She was quiet for a moment. Then, that sounds lonely. He laughed. A short, surprised sound. The first real laugh in a long time. Yeah, it does. Oh, doesn't it? Among my people, Gruka said, settling back, the map makers travel. They walk every road before they draw it. They say a map drawn from a chair is just a guess wearing the costume of certainty. Marsh stared at her. That stance rearranged something inside him. He had never thought of his work that way, but she was not wrong. He had been drawing the world from behind glass his whole life. They talked for 2 hours. She told him about the Orc clan system, how they were not the brutal raiders that city stories made them out to be, but communities built around shared labor, oral histories, and deep reverence for the natural world. She had grown up memorizing constellations, identifying medical routes, learning how to read weather in the color of clouds. He told her about Caldemar, the guild, the apartment, the long silences. He told her more than he had told anyone in years. And he was not sure why, except that she listened the way very few people do, without waiting for her turn to speak, without preparing a response, without judgment. She just listened fully, like what he was saying actually mattered. You are not broken, she said at one point, after he had trailed off. You are just in the wrong ecosystem. Some trees do not grow in cities, she said. Marsh looked at her for a long moment. No one had ever said anything to him that felt so precisely true. I should get back, he said finally, but he did not move. Neither did she. She left the next morning at dawn when the rain had thinned to a quiet mist. Marsh walked with her to northern gate of Caldmere. He was not sure why he did it. He just found himself walking beside her, watching her long strides as best he could. At the gate, they stopped. You should come, Gruka said. No ceremony, no dramatic pause, just a plain statement delivered like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Marsh looked at her. Come where? To the shattered peaks. You draw maps of places you have never seen. You are lonely in a city full of people. You have nothing holding you here. You told me this yourself. She adjusted her pack. Come, see a real road. Draw it from your feet, not your chair. His heart did something complicated. Every practical corner of his mind raised objections immediately. His job, his apartment, his lease, his routine, the comfortable architecture of a life built to minimize risk and surprise. And then he thought, what exactly am I protecting? He had built walls he called a life. He had called his isolation peace. He had called his loneliness independence, and a 7 foot orc woman he had known for one rainy night had seen through every single one of those lies in the quiet, clear way that only honest people can. I don't have the right gear, he said. A stalling tactic. They both knew it. I have enough for two. I always carry extra. She said it without pride or manipulation. Just fact. She was the kind of person who prepared for others without being asked. Because in his world, that was simply how things were done. He thought of his apartment, the single chair, the single cup. He thought of maps on his desk, hundreds of roads he had drawn without ever feeling the dirt beneath his boots. He thought of Lyra saying he felt like a grave. He thought of dinner tables where he laughed at the wrong seconds. He thought of 4 days without leaving his apartment and not one person noticing. Okay, he said. I came out barely above a whisper. She nodded, as if she expected nothing else. Good. We walk until the third mile marker. Then camp in the ashwood. I know. A stream there, clean water. They walked through the gate. Caldemir's spires shrank behind him. Mark did not look back. For the first time in the years, each step felt like it was going towards something rather than away from everything. The road ahead was muddy, unfamiliar, and slightly terrifying, but beside him walked someone who had chosen him without history, without obligation, without needing him to be anything other than the rain soaked, quiet, map making man he was. He didn't have a word for what that felt like. He thought maybe the word was hope. The shattered peaks were nothing like the maps said they were. Mars had drawn those mountains a dozen times, cold, jagged, and inhospitable. But the real peaks were shot through with hidden valleys where hot springs steamed among ancient pines. The rock faces caught the sunset and turned colors he had no names for. The air tasted like pine, resin, and clean snow, and something else, something alive. The Orc Winter Camp was a cluster of large, well made structures built for stone and timber, hung with woven banners in deep reds and oranges. Fires burned in central pits. Children, small green children, ran between legs and shouted in a language Marsh did not yet understand. Elders sat in carved chairs, smoking pipes with carved bone stems, watching the newcomer with curiosity rather than hostility. Uruka introduced him simply. This is Marsh. He draws roars. He will stay through winter. No one objected. That was the first extraordinary thing. Over the following weeks, Marsh did something he had never truly done before. He participated in a life rather than watching one from edges. He helped carry firewood. He learned 3 words of Orcish per day. He drew maps, real ones, walked ones, maps with mud on the margins and personal notes in the corners. The clan elders gathered around them with delight. They had never had their territory documented by someone who had actually stood in it. And Gruka, she was always there, not hovering, not smothering, just present. The way mountains are present, steady, quiet, and enormously solid. She taught him with berries was safe, how to read frost patterns on stone, how to sit by a fire without needing to fill every silence with noise. She also slowly told him her own story, the loneliness of moving between worlds, of being too large for human cities, and sometimes too thoughtful for the rougher edges of orc culture, of being a person who did not fit the shape of any container she had been offered. We are the same, she said on one evening. As snow fell softly outside the tent, we just wore different kinds of lonely. Marsh looked at her. This incredible, unlikely, extraordinary person, and felt something settle inside him. Not dramatically, quietly, like a key turning into a lock that had been rusted shut for years. He picked up his pen and, at the top of a fresh page, wrote two words: home found. Not a place, not a city or a mountain. Home, as in the condition of being seen and choosing to stay. This story teaches us the lesson that loneliness is not always about being alone. Sometimes we are surrounded by people and still starve for connection because connection requires honesty and courage to be exactly who we are in front of someone else. Marsh did not find his world by becoming a better version of himself. He found it by being seen completely and without apology by someone the world told him to be afraid of. The lesson is simple: the person who changes your life will rarely look the way you expect it. Open the door anyway. If the story moved you, if it made you feel even a little less alone, please follow, like, and subscribe for more stories. Every day, a new world. Every story, a new truth. Don't miss the next one. Thank you.